All right, guys, we now welcome on a very special guest. It is Race XR CEO Barry Braun. Barry, thanks a ton for joining us today.
Technically, it's XR Events.
My bad, that's on
Fun,
me.
no, it's all good. You know, we've had the name racexr.com for over 20 years. We are in the process of switching over to xrevents.com, xrevents.shop, xrevents.tickets, xrevents.plus. Just found out that the name RaceXR would get confused a lot. Uh, Folks would think of Racer X and a number of other things and get confused and can't find our stuff. So we went with a cleaner name that people can understand a bit better. And the conversion process has been underway over the past couple months, and we're actually getting close to the finish line. So you'll see that over the next couple months, but it's going to be hard to get that out of people's heads, but eventually hopefully we'll have that process completed.
How time consuming and head thumping is that to change over everything?
It's tough. It's not, it's really not that we're changing a name. It's more semantics of, the name has been XR or accelerated for over 20 years. XR Events is now what we're known by. It's just kind of a I guess you could say like a brand cleanup more than anything, just to so people understand it better. I think as promoters, as people, as anybody that is in business, you kind of get in your own little world sometimes and you get wrapped up in, well, I think it should be this way, but not understanding, how others might think. And you have to try to look at it from an outside perspective and understand that, these are typical mistakes that happen. So it's just it's an adjustment, kind of the keep it simple stupid theory, just to to try it. Because I mean, I've identified with Race XR for 20 years. It's second nature to me. But when you're advertising to a new audience and new people and a number of other things, it gets quite confusing. And now I really do get that. And especially when you take time to get feedback from your customers and kind of have an understanding of the dialogue and, how they look at things much, much differently than you do. So that's actually been quite an adjustment just to kind of understand the psychology of that. And start that transition and that switch over. But it's gone rather well. But at the end of the day, the XR name itself, whether it's Race XR or XR Events, has considerably grown in the past couple of years, and we're way, way, way ahead of pace that we thought we would be.
That's awesome. I want to get into you as a promoter and how you got into that, but I did first want to ask, and it's probably more so your question. I got to give you credit, but have you lost your mind? Throw another 100,000 to win late model race out there?
No, I'll make fun of myself. It Nothing that we do is typical. Um, as an organization, we're extremely unorthodox in our thinking and why we do things a certain way. But I will tell you this: it's not fly by the seat of your pants by any means. Is very analytical. We have a lot of data. We grew up in the information age, and we consume a lot of data. We look at different options, trends, what is happening and why. Again, it goes back again partially to psychology. How are people spending their money and why? And then we'll, look at that, um, try to make the best decision possible, the best guess, the best, you know, uh, it's tough to say because while that is important, you still have to have a feel for the market. You just can't make a decision based out of haste or based out of what you think is right. You have to back your decision with that data and also still have an understanding of how our market works. And so there is a bit of instinct too. Um, so no, the 100,000, not losing my mind, because of what we learned at Bulls Gap. this year. And so the $100,000 purse and concept was born out of the data that we had in 2022. So we did a lot of 20,000 to win shows and a lot of 40,000 to win shows. Well, here's a catch. It's about the same purse overall. Move some numbers around and found a way. So here's the problem, Connor, more so than anything. Last year, there was over 78 20,000 to win or more events in dirt late model racing. This year, as of today, there's still 50 plus for the rest of the year. Unfortunately,
You guys took up a lot of those last year, right?
Yeah, that's true.
So that would kind of check out on the math.
Yeah, about a quarter of it.
Yeah.
But what we learned more so than anything is nothing special about it. Nothing special about 20,000 to win. Nothing special about 40,000 to win. And even at this point right now, nothing's really special about 50,000 to win.
Right. With how many that are just popping up.
Correct. So it's become commonplace. There's a lot of inventory in the marketplace. In fact, there's probably too much inventory. There's too many events, and fans only have the ability to spend so much money. So they're going to go to, whatever event that they feel is worth their dollar. And because of that, that's where we look at that and we're like, oh, whoa, wait a second here. This scenario isn't working out. There's, we're spending X and we're getting Y back. And that's when we had to look at it and say, okay, well, the data doesn't lie. It truly doesn't. Numbers don't lie. And you have to look at, how can we capitalize on this? How can we capitalize on our investment and our budget to get the most yield? And so simply, it's a matter of taking much of the same budget, much of the same numbers, and then just repurposing it and building different scenarios and different events that can potentially bring in more fans. Now, we've only done one event for the Super Series so far, but it not only did it pan out way better than expected. So that theory in play panned out better than expected. And I say that because, not tooting our own horn, not tooting that we have this all, not tooting that we have this all, not tooting that we have this all figured out. But it was theory put into play, and it was also a reschedule. Typically reschedules don't work.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But the timing of that date, time of the year, where it was at, competition, and a number of things worked in our favor, and it worked out incredibly well. So we're not one to rest on just doing it to do it that way. So we saw some things at Bulls Gap that in how that event played out, in our theory, execution of the event, and how it happened and why. We continue to study those numbers and trends and what happened after the event. And then we looked at that and said, well, wait a second. Discipline is a big thing. Okay. Very big thing. So to be able to stop, change your schedule, and redo it on the fly is something that's not normal. In fact, it's not looked well upon at times. Upsets the apple cart a bit. I get that, but I'm not going to wait, knowing going into the event that it possibly has a very good % chance that it won't do well. And so we took all that data, all of that information that we had, and had some discussions about it. And we're like, no, what we got away from. So last year we did a lot of 2-day events where it was, 20,000 to win both days at some of these smaller venues. Fairly good attendance, but here's what we learned. There's 2 opportunities for people to spend their money. And when there's 2 opportunities, you give them an option to walk away from the other one.
Yeah.
And that's where we said, wait a second, these need to be 1-day events. I didn't realize that a 1-day 100,000 to win event would would be as successful as it was at Bulls Gap. And that was not by design, that was by weather. And so we learned some things in that, in how people spend their money in 2023. It's not 1983, it's not 1993, it's not even 2023. How they spend their money is way different than the past. Way different. And that's what we have to look at in those trends, in those numbers, and then craft events around that. And it's not because we want to do like some super scientific different ways of doing thing. We just want to do good business. If we do good business, it's good by the industry, it's good by the drivers, it's good by the fans, and then we can build off of that. We're not doing it to be different. We're not doing it to be difficult to anybody else in the industry. But what we're doing is simply being extremely disciplined to what we're learning in our business. We do have to make money like any other business. And because of that, we're going to look at things at a much different scope than anyone else, because we came from a different angle. We came from broadcasting. We didn't come from sponsorships. We didn't come from the typical business model of promoting events.
Yeah, I wish my boss could be on here. His name is Chris Williams, and he would love what you're kind of preaching right now as a guy that owns independent media companies. That he has a saying: it's just adapt or die. Especially with newspapers these days going out of business like that because they're not adapting to a certain structure. They're owned by a conglomerate, too big of a company. So I think that's really interesting that you say all that about what you guys were looking at, because I think today it gets really one dimensional on who's scheduling races where, just with the amount of dates that are available, especially with when you guys came in battling against two different national tours, and then now along with Flow Racing Night in America.
Right. And I think it's key to, when you say adapt, you can't be afraid to adapt. You can't be afraid of change. What some may seem as being reckless is absolutely not reckless whatsoever. You have to remember we're really only in the second year of the XR Super Series. These other tours and events have been established for decades, 20, 30 plus years. They ground out all of their bad mistakes in the first 5 years, and that's out of sight, out of mind. I mean, you weren't even born when some of those were
Yeah, no, absolutely
getting
not.
started. And because of that, people judge us differently because we're growing up per se in front of everybody's eyes, whereas in the past, in the 80s and 90s and early 2000s, these other folks, there wasn't even social media back then. There was message boards, but that's about it. That's like when AOL would dial up your phone and you could hardly get anything to load. That's quite a different world. So we're growing up in a completely different scenario. We're okay with all that. I get it. We've took heat. We've continued to build. We are projected to grow significantly in the next couple of years. And we're doing that by staying disciplined, by not listening to the noise and what's going on in the marketplace. But at the same time, we are respecting the market. I think that's very evident in the fact that we're not booked on top of anyone this year. We go out of our way to make sure that doesn't happen now. Simply, it's just good business. It's not looked well upon, but at the same time, financially, it's just not smart. To book against these other events, which creates competition. And I'll, more so than anything, to be quite transparent, in streaming, it's the most important. You could have events on the other ends of the world and still run those events, and that's all well and fine. Financially, those events can be successful independently of streaming. But at the same time, when there's a race on a Flow and a Dirt Vision, they are competing against each other. It doesn't matter what anybody says. They're competing for the same audience. When you have 15 races on a weekend, it's not even worth streaming.
Mhm.
I'd rather just go and get in the boat and go fishing at that point because it's just not worth it. There's only X amount of customers that are going to watch X amount of events. And at that point, you're trying to defeat the inevitable. And the inevitable is that there's just too much going on. You're not going to be able to cut through that, regardless if you have the best racers in the entire universe and you're paying hundreds of gazillions of dollars. It doesn't matter. Competition is competition, and there's only so much of an audience to go and pick from.
Yeah, I like how you think, and I think a lot of fans wish that companies, all three of the big broadcasting companies in dirt racing, with you guys flowing dirt vision, I think everyone wishes they would kind of schedule complimentary of each other instead of versus, right?
I think for the most part they are. I don't really. I mean, I think that people make it more than it actually is at this point.
Mhm.
There is a I don't want to say unwritten rule, or even though some of us really don't have to talk, we kind of take care of our own at this point. Um, Absolutely. I mean, we're still competition. There's still probably bad feelings here and there. I could care less. They do as they need to. We'll do as we need to, and let the best business do its thing. Um, but I think right now, no, you're not seeing that a lot. It might get murky in the upcoming years. I think as business models are challenged, expenses are challenged, as business models are challenged more so than anything, I think it will get murky. And I think more so than anything, because of our promoters, for the most part, aren't making money. And the promoters and the events that are making money are the ones that are going to stand tall. It's not going to be about, um, who's got the flashiest semi, who's
Mhm.
got TV rights, because nobody watches TV anymore. A number of other things that, were fun back in the day. Not realistic, more so than anything. It was, oh, well, I get to do this, or I get to be shown here, or whatever. No, it's about bottom line. Who's winning and who's losing at the gate is going to be much more critical than any of this flash and whatnot of any of these, companies or sanctioning bodies or whatever. It's all well and great that the circus comes to town and it looks great and you got fireworks and whatnot, but if you're not making any money, it really doesn't matter.
For sure. And you kind of paint me as a guy that, I no one would expect you to have your 2024 schedule written out right now, but I feel like you have something in mind for what can fans expect in 2024 from you guys.
Our schedule's already done for 2024.
There we go.
So again, it's this year. First of all, 2022, we did a lot. We ended up doing 22 of the 23 scheduled dates, which was ridiculous because no one in their right mind, especially when you think about this year and the weather, nobody in their right mind would think we're going to get all these events in. So that schedule was built thinking we're going to lose a quarter of our events. That didn't happen. We ended up doing 22 of 23, ended up doing all of the events. We only lost one event day to rain, Friday at Charlotte. So it was a lot of work, incredible amount of work. And then we did North Wilkesboro on top of the XR Super Series last year, which was way too much work. So we kind of took a back seat this year, caught our breath, really looked at, how can we be efficient as a business moving forward? Some things that we saw in the business. This business was built utilizing methods in a model much like other sanctioning bodies and tours, and we've completely reinvented that. And we're going to do some things in the next couple months, in the next year, that will really make us a super efficient business. Uh, I take pride in the fact that at Bulls Gap, our staff total was 12 people total at that event. We oversold that track. Um, and that's what it's going to take in the world of technology and big business right now. That's called right sizing. COVID happened, everybody overhired. Now they're laying people off and they're building a more efficient business, and we're no different. So we take actually more pride in a tighter model and profitability than anything else. Yeah, it's cool to do big races. Don't get me wrong. I mean, the race fan in you wants to do really awesome races and awesome events, but you also need to make money because you need to survive. And um, we've incorporated a lot of our broadcast business model into the event side and looked at it from a completely different scope than what traditionally would be done. And you'll see some of that in the next year. At the track, outside of the track, everything else. There's some really exciting things coming. I was not in charge of the company until about July of last year. I took about 2 years off. Well, I really didn't take time off. I was working in a different capacity. We had hired other folks to come in and run the company, but I was basically out from 18 months to almost 2 years. I came back in July, and we've re-engineered the whole event side after that point. And I'm very excited. I mean, I get really geeked out about the business side. Uh, Efficiency is key, very key. And that's what's going to make it a company that can pay out big events and continue to survive moving forward. You can't run a company with a lot of fat and put on big purses at the same time. Something's got to give. So we also don't base our company on sponsorships. In fact, to this day, we're really not even looking at sponsorships right now. And a lot of the reason why is because sponsorships can make or break a business. It's too volatile. So we have not built our business based off of that whatsoever. The fans are our sponsors. That's the bottom line. Whether it's broadcasting or at the track, that's the sponsors. That money gets repurposed back into purses and a number of other things. And so far, it's worked very well, but we still have a lot of tweaks that we need to do and still more data. Because again, we can have all of these wonderful ideas, but I'll be the first to tell you, it's very it'll make you very humble, because when you think you have something figured out, the next event is going to completely break your back. And then you're going to be like, wait a second here. And I don't care how old you are. I don't care how much experience you've got. In fact, I think if you're too old, sometimes you don't want to look at new trends and new ways of doing things. And because of that, your business loses out on things. But I'll say this, I'm 46 years old. I've learned more in the last 2 years than my whole life.
Yeah, I love that, and everything you said there, because I geek out over some of that stuff, at least the stuff that we end up seeing on the surface and everything. How much did you have any involvement in the NASCAR All Star race being at North Wilkesboro? Was that part of your cleanup, or was that kind of a separate thing that came along after?
So no, when we signed that agreement last year, we had a soft goal of 3 years, and they were going to get NASCAR back. 3 years turned into 3 months. For whatever reason, and again, this is not ego. It's an opportunity that was presented to us. We had to work at warp speed and build a event that everything fell into place. The assistance of Dale Earnhardt Jr. and a number of other factors came into play. We put on a show. After the first event that we did there, the pavement modified event, the negotiations already started to take place. They did not believe that North Wilkesboro could come back, and it came back in the first event, first night. Place was packed. those negotiations started then, I believe. I'm not privy to that. I'm not a NASCAR guy. I'll be the first to tell you. I have almost zero interest in it. No disrespect to NASCAR as an entity or anybody that's a fan of it. It's just not my thing. I love dirt track racing. And but at the end of the day, it was received very well. It was attended very well. Because of it, they started negotiating days before we were to have the August 31 event, the Cars Tour event that was oversold and sold out. They came to me and said, "Hey, the racers want to do this. They want to race on the old track." And because of it, we couldn't do the dirt track event that we had planned for October. We had planned to take the pavement up and race on the dirt, the original dirt at North Wilkesboro. But the old track proved us wrong. It proved everybody wrong. It proved NASCAR wrong, Speedway Motorsports wrong, everybody. Everybody and their brother thought that track was lost as far as from a surface standpoint. And it absolutely proved engineers wrong and everybody under the sun wrong that surface was what these guys want. It's technical, it's gritty, it's everything that we don't have in a brand new paved racetrack. And they wanted to add that variable to the schedule. And who am I to step in the way?
Mhm.
Absolutely not. So they asked me that. I'm like, not a problem. My job here is done. I signed off on it, and we canceled the dirt month, and that's it. That's their baby. That's their gig, and I wish them the best. And I hope that it's extremely successful. Um, we had a lot of fun with it, and it went a lot faster than it was supposed to. And that's cool. Who doesn't like to have a goal and achieve it faster than you expected? So I think it's going to be quite the event and the spectacle. It's huge for this Wilkes County and the state of North Carolina. It's absolutely huge what it's going to do and the economic impact that it's going to have. I will say this, just working in that area a short amount of time, that track closing down had a significant impact on the economics of that whole county. At the same time, or around the same time that they lost the racetrack, they also lost Lowe's
Yeah. Okay.
as a corporate hub, and it just tore that county to shreds financially. There's still a lot of very good businesses in that area, including Tyson Foods and some other places. But
You're talking about two really big losses in the
yeah,
same time frame.
huge losses. I mean, debilitating losses. It's a phenomenal area, picturesque, beautiful area. But they lost two big entities in a small amount of time, and that just ripped the heart out of the economy in that area. So having this come back, the economic impact that it has, North Wilkesboro Speedway, it will be a boon to the area. They're going to, see some revenue that they haven't seen in a long time. But more importantly than anything, long term, they're going to it's back. They're going to see it long term. They're going to see not only the economic impact, but what it can bring back to the area. And I think that's more so than anything. That's more so than just having the race, NASCAR, the All-Star race, or what have you. To see that come back into an area that was, they just tore out the economy in that area, but to see it pump back in there, and I think that'll lead to more opportunities for Wilkes County, North Wilkesboro, that whole area. We'll see a revitalization, and I think that when us as fans, look at these races, and this is our thing. This is what we go to for entertainment. But to realize the economic impact and what it can do for the area is just as big. We do it because we love it, right? But what it does for everyone else from an economic standpoint is huge. It's absolutely huge what it can do for these areas. So I think that that's more important than the actual NASCAR part. The NASCAR piece of
Mhm.
it is part of the puzzle, but to see that all come together, to me, that's a huge win for motorsports in general. And then, I mean, let's be real, it's cool. It's a cool track,
Yeah.
and it gets away from these nasty super speedways, and it puts it back to its roots, and that's super cool for us as fans.
I do have a specific question for you on that Dirt Month thing. What was the prospective entry list looking like for the sprint car race there? Can you give us any names that might have been on it?
Um,
I know you guys.
sprint cars were 305s because there was a concern to have 410s there because it was so big. In
Gotcha.
fact, the super late model guys were pretty concerned too, and I get it. I just posted this on Twitter yesterday, but I believe on Twitter or no Facebook. The problem with the bigger tracks, be it a Bristol, a Belleville, West Virginia Motor Speedway, which is where this discussion came up in 2023. These cars are so geeked out; they're so fast. The bodies are not the same anymore. So that you could say that for late models and sprint cars,
Mhm. Yeah.
they are ridiculous fast now. To the point where a half mile or even bigger is quite daunting, um, because of a safety standpoint. And I will tell you this: I don't think there's nothing fun about watching a car that's at warp speed. Um, because usually it leads to not much passing and whatnot. It's breathtaking, don't get me wrong, but it starts to really teeter on, is it unsafe? And a lot of it is just because of the technology and the crazy things they can do with like a super late model these days and a sprint car that starts to make it questionable. And so looking back, it was going to be an okay entry list, but I don't think it was going to knock anybody's socks off. I think the
Gotcha.
spectacle of actually just racing on dirt there. Now, if you get into like a stock car or a street stock or something of that nature, man, they probably would have put on some ridiculously good shows, just like they did at Bristol. A stock car type car at Bristol was the best racing, period. In fact, the Hornets or the Compacts or the Forwards or whatever you want to call them, in fact, they were really good. Well, why is that? Because they're going around 80, 85 miles per hour. It wasn't warp speed. They could race with each other. They could slice and dice, slide jobs, all that other stuff. And that's what was fun about it. But when you're going 100 plus and you're just doing the whole, warp speed thing, not necessarily sure that that's the best racing. And I think that was proven this year. Now we're starting, all of us, sanctioning bodies series, and all of us are starting to look at smaller tracks and possibilities.
Gotcha. And then I want to know if we could get an update on Pennsboro Speedway. How is that project? You guys kind of went from North Wilkesboro, and shortly after, I want to say a matter of a few months, announced that the next track you'd be kind of working on is Pennsboro Speedway. Is this going to be a continuous series, or was this just another project that happened to come up in relation?
No, it just came up. We had visited the track early last year. I put it on the sidebar because I knew North Wilkesboro was coming, and we don't have the capacity to take on too much at the same
Mhm.
time. In fact, we still take on too much. Um, and honestly, when you look at our schedule is reflective of our bandwidth of how much we can handle. We want to put on good events at every single event, and if we don't feel that we are confident that we can put on a good event, that's part of the decision. That's part of the reasoning why we schedule a certain way. But no, Pennsboro, it's moving along. I think people have to understand we have a 2024 goal. That doesn't necessarily mean that everything's going to start happening tomorrow. There's a lot of things that have to happen from a financial standpoint to planning and zoning, government. There's bridges at the track there, so I have to get studies done. Um, when you start, changing how water is moved around and stuff like that, you have to get permitting and all this other stuff. So yeah, I will say it's moving along. It's at the pace it needs to be. We actually just finished a soil sample for Pennsboro. And it came back, multiple samples. The dirt there is phenomenal. And that is a good first start. In the past, they would race during the day and they would put calcium chloride on the track. Calcium chloride keeps dust down, but it also eats tires. Calcium chloride is not good for any dirt track at all. But through the course of the past 20 plus years, natural chemistry has happened where grass is grown, grass is bladed up, so it's natural organics. The composition of the soil rebuilt itself over the past 20 years, which is super cool because there's two ways you can fix calcium chloride. You can either do it that way, and it takes a long time. In fact, they've done the same thing at Charlotte Motor Speedway's dirt track. They've grown grass on it, bladed it, but it takes time. It takes years, in fact. The other way is to remove the dirt and put new dirt down, and that's very costly. So, through natural, just a bunch of folks on the board having a hope and a dream every year, they just blade it, and just worked out. It's awesome. Thing about Pennsboro is it feels very natural. It's going to be an awesome event. Going to be awesome events, plural. And but it's moving along. Soil samples are done. Engineering studies are on the way. And then once that's cracked out, we figure out exactly what we're going to do with the track and what it's going to look like. I'm very, very specific in how the track will look. I'm very detail oriented about the history of the facility and with respect to that. So you'll see a lot of things that pay homage to the past, and we're not going to disrespect the opportunity. I keep it very true to what it needs to be. I'm a big baseball fan, and I've seen stadiums redone, and sometimes it sucks the soul right out of them when they're redone.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to be a part of that. So we're going to be very particular to the point where sometimes it's costly, and but we're going to do it the right way. And I think that man, you want to talk about revitalization, economic impact, and all that other stuff. When Pennsboro comes back, it's going to be massive, and we're looking forward to it.
I love that. And I got one more for you. You talk about how your company is unorthodox and kind of thinks outside the box. You've been in the promoting business for a little bit now. What's the craziest promotional idea that you've had that didn't come to fruition?
Boy, that could be a lot, actually. I don't know. I would say dirt at North Wilkesboro at this point that didn't come to fruition. We've thrown a lot of we've taken a lot of swings on certain things. For whatever reason they might not have worked out. But yeah, dirt at North Wilkesboro because just it's ridiculous to even think about it, but the old pavement proved us wrong, and that's cool. It didn't happen. So it might have been good that it didn't happen. I don't know.
What would the battles have been of racing on dirt that's been covered by an asphalt racetrack for 45, 50 years?
So I think the battles, it's different in the fact that we're taking the pavement up and racing on the original dirt. So what's even there? What is even there? And
that's what I was wondering the whole time when I saw it.
Yeah, who knows what's there. It probably red clay, because that's what that area has. But what again, who knows what could have happened? because who knows what was there and why and all that other stuff. So I think the biggest thing on that is all the unknown, all the unknown. Could we have done it? Absolutely. All the best crew in the world, best equipment and everything else. How it would have panned out, I don't know. Maybe it could have been phenomenal racing. Who knows? But yeah, I think that is probably the craziest gimmick that didn't work out for whatever reason.
Awesome. Well, thanks a ton, Barry, for taking the time. We really appreciate it. I'll let you get on with your day.
Appreciate it, guys. And again, if you want to follow XR Super Series, it's xrsuperseries.com. Get all the information there. xrevents.tickets for all your tickets. And then xrevents.shop is actually launching here pretty soon. So if you want to get your apparel, you can get that. But again, XR Events is where it's at for any of the web addresses, anything else. XR Events 218 on all of the social media. So appreciate the opportunity, and anything we can do to help in the future, let me know.
Awesome. Enjoy the weekend, everybody.